YouTube vinyl community, Beach Boys fans, random people on the internet, my name is Giggens, and we are here today to talk about the Beach Boys' 1969 mystery, Close Up, released on Capitol Records. The reason why I call this a mystery is because I can't figure this album out. The Close Up series was a happening. It happened. It was a happening in the summer of 1969 for a handful of artists on Capitol Records: Merle Haggard, Buck Owens, Nancy Wilson, Frank Sinatra, a slew of people: Nat King Cole, Lou Rawls, Letterman, Jackie Gleason, a bunch of people. And what these albums were either repackagings of earlier albums, like mostly greatest hits albums, or single collections with a new picture of that person with a big picture on the front that was actually a giant gatefold. So let me show you that, because pow, look at that. Giant, huge picture of the Beach Boys. So that's how all these were. The reason why this thing is such a mystery for me is because of this. So you've got the capital C logo, which was introduced in 1969. And then the labels themselves are, in fact, the Rainbow Color Band, as you have come to love them throughout the 60s. So, after doing as much research as I can on this series, and there's not much out there, basically what I was able to discover is that these albums were basically created to get rid of the Rainbow label and then make room for the new Lime Purple Sea label that came out from Capitol in the end of 1969, and they used that for a couple of years. So that was like their way of basically cleaning house, was to use like a double LP set to get rid of as many labels as they could from some of their biggest names, just shift those away instead of throwing them out, just they used them instead. And that's what they did. So again, here's where the mystery lies. In April of 1969, the Beach Boys filed another lawsuit against Capitol Records for unpaid royalties and for production fees. Brian was owed like $1 million or something, and the royalties were like $600,000 or something. Basically, in doing so, they ended their contract with Capitol, and there was no terms of renegotiation. Capitol was like, "Yeah, you're done, goodbye," and it's thusly deleted almost all of their albums from the catalog, beyond Little Deuce Coupe, and I think the greatest hits albums at that point, volumes 1, 2, and 3. Because they took most of their albums with them post Pet Sounds Capitol albums they took with them to Warner Brothers Reprise in 1970. But here's the thing. This is classified as like a budget line release. But the scale on which it was produced, to me, doesn't seem like a budget line release. It was on LP, it was on cassette, it was on reel-to-reel, it was on 8-track, and it was even on 4-track. No one bought 4-track. People who owned a 4-track tape recorder playing machine were like, we don't have any tapes for this. Like, no one bought 4-track. So this thing was released literally on every medium possible in 1969, which blows my mind. Here's the other thing. There are 2 albums on here. This is the Surfin' USA album and the All Summer Long album. Missing 4 songs. Surfin' USA is missing Misery Lou, and Let's Go Trippin'. And All Summer Long is missing Carl's Big Chance and Hushabye, which that's super sad because that's one of the best songs. So here's an album by a band on a label whose label is getting screwed over and sued by one of its most popular acts. It was one of those most popular acts. By this point in 1969, the Beach Boys in America just weren't selling anymore. They did have a big song with I Can Hear Music earlier this year, in 1969. They hit number 24 in the charts, but beyond that, it had been years of Capitol putting money into a band that wasn't popular anymore. They were canceling shows all over 1969. They were huge in England, but in America, they just weren't cutting it. And putting out surf music from a band that had worked the last 3 or 4 years to prove themselves to not be a surf band, putting them on a big double collection in 1969, what was Capitol thinking? Who was their target audience for this? People who missed 1963? Like, who were they trying to market this to? If anything, what they should have done was put together a really cohesive greatest hits album. Delete volumes 1, 2, and 3 of the best of the Beach Boys. Make them a really, really decent 2 LP set of their hits, and call it Close Up if you want. Put their picture on it, fine. But put that out instead. That way it would have been like a real early precursor to Endless Summer, but that would have made much more sense. Um, or just do their post Pet Sounds era to try to promote songs from those albums. Make a big mixtape of songs from Smiley Smile to 2020 and try to promote those albums again with a new set. Make a greatest hits of those songs. Especially because you got a picture of them looking like this and they're singing about Surfing USA. Like, it doesn't fit. It doesn't fit with the times. The other albums that were sold, like the Frank Sinatra one, the Nancy Wilson, Lou Rawls, the Letterman, they all had, their hits were of their time. They weren't like giant selling acts. Maybe Merle Haggard was at this time, maybe Buck Owens, but like, in the late 60s, so you've got collections of like Frank Sinatra's stuff from the 50s, which is one of his greatest hits albums, I guess, but minus a couple of songs and with a crappy, muddy mix or something. So this whole thing is a mystery to me. I really feel like it was just thrown together for all these groups, kind of haphazardly, just to move some of these labels and shift product before they can start a new era of Capitol Records. So, again, for this to be released on literally every format possible in 1969 by a label who didn't care to promote these guys anymore and knew that they weren't going to sell blows my mind. Why would they put so much money into something that they knew wasn't going to be like a giant seller? And especially all over these formats, like reel-to-reel was expensive, 4-track was expensive, cassette tapes were new, those were expensive. Basically, the album is the way that it's going to be heard. So you get all these labels on here for Capitol Rainbow label, get rid of them all. And then by the end of 1969, that label, the green label with the purple C came out. You'll see like copies of Revolver, Magical Mystery Tour, a bunch of those on the green label. You won't see any Beach Boys though because all their albums were deleted. Beyond the Good Vibrations Greatest Hits they came out with in 1970, which is super hard to find, and there's actually a couple red copies out there, red label copies, which are even more hard to find. Okay. Part of me thinks maybe this was done in a trolling effort by Capitol to put together their surf songs by a band that had spent the last 3 or 4 or 5 years now vehemently getting away from that sound. Maybe Capitol was like, whoa, you're going to sue us? Okay, well, we're going to put out Surfing USA again. By the way, you're always going to be a surf band. Like, they had moved past this so hard, and especially at this time, they were working on the songs that would become Sunflower. So they were in a whole different ball game altogether at this point. And Carl and Dennis were proving themselves to be great producers. Carl produced I Can Hear Music. The whole thing was in a different world, even from like a year before with the Friends album. The 2020 album was a whole different approach, and production-wise and everything else, it was a whole different ball game. So part of me really feels like Capitol was like, you know what? Instead of like doing them justice and putting out something decent to show where they're at now, include the new singles on here like Breakaway and I Can Hear Music, Cotton Fields. Instead of doing something like that, some sort of current thing, let's show off songs from 6 years ago that are completely not with the times. Or maybe that was their intention. Maybe they purposely put together projects like this close-up thing to show their old material from all these groups, Frank Sinatra, Nancy Wilson, etc. Maybe that was the point of this series. I have seen some advertising clippings from newspapers promoting these albums. They were like, less than $4 for their time for a double LP set. It's pretty good. So maybe they were a budget line release. Maybe there was such a thing as a budget line reel-to-reel tape and a in a 8-track. The whole thing completely confuses me. I'm not going to go into detail about the albums because that's a whole different review. You've heard Surfing USA and All Summer Long. I think I did All Summer Long already. I think I did. So there's that. Let me at least show you the inside. So the inside again, more pictures of them from their current look in 1969, bar for a couple of pictures from earlier 1966. But yeah, it's got the track listing there. I don't know why they took songs off. Obviously, they made the albums before with all the songs on side 1 and side 2 of their respective albums. So taking songs off doesn't make any sense. I'm not sure who was behind that one. But again, the labels are kind of cool. So it says Close Up, The Beach Boys. The Beach Boys. Actually, let me show you disc 2 on here, because that one's actually got a bit of a misprint. On my copy, anyway. Where is it? It's gonna be really hard to see. Record 2, side 4, where it starts up with Wendy. It's funny. All of these songs are credited to Brian Wilson. They're not credited to Brian Wilson and Mike Love. That's interesting. Yeah, I Get Around. Holy moly, these are all Brian Wilson songs. That's crazy. All right. This is gonna be really, really hard to see. Let's see if I can try this. Do you see the word stereo? And then you might be able to pause it there. But basically, the printing for stereo and the actual label, you can see how the word close-up is kind of blurry. It looks like there was a printing error there. Basically, it got like, maybe the ink was too wet and it swiped around a little bit. But kind of interesting. So yeah, this is a complete anomaly in the Beach Boys canon for me. Obviously, it's not like an official album by them, but for me, there's nothing about this online. There's no videos. There's barely any talk about this thing, and I feel like you might see it pretty common in the bins, and I wanted to make a video about it just to give some history and just ask a bunch of questions. What do you guys think about this thing? Do you have it? What kind of history can you tell me about it? Do you own it on cassette? Do you have it on reel-to-reel? Do you have it on 4-track? I'd love to see a 4-track. Show me those. Yeah, that's kind of it. Just a short video to talk about this thing. Actually, I'm barely even talking about it. I'm just kind of asking questions about its whole reason for existing. So, yeah, that's going to do it. The Beach Boys, close up. This has been a chat and some history about the Beach Boys in 1969 and Capitol Records. It was never reissued ever again after it came out. That was it. One-time deal, done. And that was the end of Capitol Records. That was the end for them, and that was the end of the Rainbow label, and it was the end of the Beach Boys era with them. This was the last album that came out in the 60s for them on the Rainbow label. The last album that came out for them after that was again the Good Vibrations album in 1970 on the Lime Green label. But yeah, this is like a sad end of an era for the Beach Boys in the 60s on Capitol. To have something like this come out, this like butchered up version of 2 of their albums with some bizarre choices of songs to promote in 1969. Yeah, I could probably talk about this for another half hour, but instead I'm going to cut it off there and let you guys chat about it, and we'll all chat about it and figure out what exactly this album is supposed to be. So, thank you so much for watching. My name is Giggens. This has been Album Reviews with the Beach Boys, Close Up, 1969, Capitol Records, July 21st of that year. Thank you so much for watching, guys, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye-bye.